Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are going to be working on a project inside here in my seed starting room. I wanted to give you a tour of our seed starting room. I've done one before a while back. It's changed a little bit because we've had to move some things around for the construction, but I wanted to really focus today's video on sharing with you the cost of everything that we use in our seed starting room that allows us to start thousands and thousands of seeds every year without making it so complicated and overly costly. The first thing we're going to be doing today is cleaning it up because it's kind of a mess. And this is a safe space, so we're not going to judge. I'm going to show you what it looks like. We're going to get it under control because our seed orders are starting to arrive and I need to get it together before we get too behind. So let me show you what it looks like now. We will get set up, we will get cleaned up, and then we will go over everything that I have and talk a little bit about what I think are probably the most important components of investing in terms of seed starting. All right, remember, no judging. We are not going to judge. So this is the space where we start a lot of our seeds, or all of our seeds other than when we winter sow. And we used to have 4 racks in here, but now we've moved down to 4 just because we've had to move some things in here to make room out there. And we use the other 2 racks to store boxes on. So we're just kind of maneuvering things around as we go. Now you can tell this rack here is pretty much almost ready in terms of the lights. This rack, I might not need the full rack. So I think we're just going to move and organize some of these things in here. But for the most part, I think our main rack is going to be this one. Now, the great thing about this setup, it serves a dual purpose. So it's mainly for seed starting during this time of the year. But once seed starting season is done, we actually remove all of the lights and then we store them in the attic. And then these racks become overflow storage and storage for like Christmas stuff. So all of those boxes are kind of tucked away in another area of the house. We take those out of here, we put the lights in, do the seed starting. Once that's done, we move everything out and then bring the boxes in. So it's really a two-purpose room. It's not just for seed starting, which is great because we don't have, a greenhouse right now. So we can't really start all of these outdoors or in a greenhouse like we would love to one day. But this has been such a great way for us to start thousands of seeds without having any like super fancy setup, crazy like fancy lights or a greenhouse. This is like, in my eyes, the perfect situation. It's just very concise, it's clean, it's orderly, and it works perfect. So I kind of have a game plan of what I want to do in this room. I'd like to start out first by clearing out this shelf here. I think I'll keep most of this here with the exception of bags and backpacks. I will move those out of here. And then these are just some overflow dishes that we need to use that we don't keep in the kitchen right now. We also have some appliances that we're not really using, so I kind of want to tuck things away. We do have some like makeup and cologne and perfume overflow here too. We'll just keep this stuff here because we're still reaching for some of these items. And so we'll kind of organize these shelves. Down here is a situation that just gives me so much anxiety because this is part of our internet router or our camera, our security system. I think, I'm not sure, Sergey, this is his area here. So he is going to clean up because this cable management is just driving me nuts, and it drives him nuts too because we like everything tidy, especially when it comes to cables. So let's go ahead and start kind of clearing this out, and then we will come in here and tackle this because just look at this. We have, I don't even know what we have here. We have some of our grow mats. We have a couple of these. We have racks that goes to our dehydrator. I don't know what that's doing in here. We have an old calendar, magazine, our iron, some random mason jars, and just random things. So let's go ahead and get set up. Let's start organizing, dust, cleaning, and then we will start setting up the remaining of the lights in here. best instant coffee, by the way. I typically drink Nespresso, but oh my gosh, when I want instant coffee, that is the best. Okay, I'm gonna show you guys how to hang these lights on these racks. So first, you wanna make sure that your bulbs are in, because that's just going to make it much easier. And then I gently lay them down, and then I come in with these chains here, and I will make sure to link everything down below. So I will come in with this chain that has these little S hooks, and we will hook the first one on the top, and then we will feed the second hook into these little insert holes here. So I just go like this, and it's usually easier to do this with two people, but you can totally do it by yourself. And then I raise it up and then hook it to the chain. Now, depending on how high you need to go or how low you need to go is where you determine where you're going to hang up your chain. And we'll talk about that in a minute. You'll see that I have different levels of the lights. We have ones that are super low and some that are super high. It just depends on what stage our seedlings are in. So these are nice because you can just easily come in and adjust the heights to them whenever you need. All right, so again, we have the S hook. We're gonna hook that first, and then we'll come in with the second one, and we will just feed it through our fixture, and then hang the light, just like that. All right, that looks so much better, you guys. And now I can come in here and actually focus and just getting everything in order for seed starting, because it can be so chaotic. So the more organized and the cleaner things can be, the easier this whole process is. I also took the time to dust all of the racks, because if there's one thing that gets under my skin is dust. And so I like to have all of my lights nice and clean on the tops, because, you know, soil falls on them, all of the dust. So if I just get a head start on that, it doesn't become so overwhelming. And I just don't like dust on my things. So getting that done feels so good. The bottom rack I haven't installed yet. I'm gonna have Sergey check these bulbs one more time, because I think these might have been from the first year. So I'm gonna have to ask him and confirm with him, because I think we were going to switch those out, but he might have already done that. So I don't wanna hang them yet. So we're about set up. The only thing that I'm really missing in here are my seed starting trays, which usually I will start all of the seeds outdoors because I make such a mess, and then I'll bring them in. I do like to have my little cart in here with my water, my fertilizer, extra plant tags, all those types of things just sitting right here in the corner. So I will bring that in. I also left one of our fans up here. I turned that on once we start our seedlings and they start sprouting, just to have good airflow, and it also strengthens your seedlings. So a fan is definitely a recommendation. I also have our heat mats, and we'll talk about these in just a sec, and I'll let you know what I truly think about these and whether or not you should buy them. The other thing that I love, which is totally not necessary, is this little fan, which is kind of like a gnat catcher. And I don't know if you guys get gnats when you start seeds. I sometimes do, and they just bug me so much. So I got this little fan. It has a blue light when you turn it on, and the gnats are attracted to the light, and then it sucks them into this little sticky pad. This is kind of gross, but I'm going to show you anyway. And you see they just get stuck and collect to that sticky pad. This is from last season. I need to clean that out. But anyways, they just, I mean, this really helps with our gnat issue that we sometimes have with our seed starting, especially when we start waking up our dahlias. I notice more activity, and this really helps. So again, not necessary. You can just use the little sticky trees. That works just fine, but I love this little thing so much. All right, now that we have that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about our racks and how much it costs to outfit each one for seed starting. So starting with the racks, I know we got these at Costco a few years ago. And I think back then they were probably, I would say like under 150 if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you've purchased them a few years ago. And I think now they're a little bit higher. I did find these at Home Depot. I saw some for $205. I saw some other ones in other websites for, it was like around $156. So the racks kind of vary in price, but they're just those traditional racks. I recommend getting ones with wheels because you can easily move them around if you have to. We do, because I like to clean behind the racks after every growing season. So it's nice to have that ability to shift them around, or if you're going to shift them around in your house anyway, it's nice to have the wheels on there already. And what I like about these racks is that you can adjust their heights too. So once you're done with seed starting and you want to use them for storage, you can adjust the size of each shelf. That way, if you have smaller boxes or bigger boxes, it kind of accommodates all of them. The other reason why I like these racks is because it allows you to hang the light fixtures on them without really having to jimmy rig anything. It's just really like plug and play once you get them all hung. So I love that about these racks. And I remember when I took Florette's class a few years back, I remember asking her about our racks and our lights, and she said it's pretty much how she started before, you know, they had a ton of land and a whole greenhouse and all of that business. So this is the perfect setup, and I've had the best success with this setup. And I've had it for what, 3, maybe 4 years now, going into 4 years. So I will not change anything because it works so well. Now let's talk about the light fixtures. I wrote down some prices here for you guys. I went online and I found each fixture for $35.97. So if you round that up to $36, we have 3 fixtures per shelf. That comes out to be $108, which is not bad. I mean, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shelves that we're using. So 108 for each of the shelves that we're going to be using. And then the lights, you can get a 30-pack for $94.98, or you can get the 2-pack for $12.98. So the lights, in my eyes, are not super expensive. Everything has gone up in price the last couple of years, but I think it's still pretty reasonable considering that we've had everything for 3 years now. I haven't changed out a single light bulb. So it was kind of like a one-time investment in terms of the fixtures, the rack. The light bulbs are the only things you're going to have to replace over time. But so far, I haven't changed any of them. The light bulbs that I use are the T8 fluorescent lights. I don't really care for the LED lights. I don't know, I think some people love them and they swear by them. I don't like them. When you're buying bulbs, you need to pay attention to the lumens and the temperature of the light bulb, so the kelvins. It's really important for seedlings to have high lumens, and the Kelvin should be around 6,500 K. That is ideal for early growth. I've seen so many people buy those red lights and those pink lights and ones that have like multiple arms, and that might work for them. However, I don't like that at all. First of all, I like everything to be consistent, because once you have a setup that works efficiently, everything else is going to just fall into place. So when you're constantly having to adjust these arms or like the lengths of the lights, I don't know. It's such a waste of time. And to be true, like completely transparent, I hate chaos. I like things to just be in order. And this to me is very in order, and it's easy and it's not fancy and it's worked beautifully for the last 4 years. And I can really nerd out on lighting if anybody is ever interested, but I promise you all you need are going to be these T8 fluorescent lights. When you start looking into those other lights that are so expensive, like the $150 light bulbs that are like red, and it talks about all of these light spectrums and the color spectrum, those lights are only necessary for like vegetative growth. So if you plan on growing a whole dahlia inside, great, you might need those lights. If you plan on growing tomatoes indoors, yes, you might need those lights. Or if you want to overwinter a lemon tree indoors, you will need those lights. But for seed starting, you do not need those lights. I promise you it's a waste of money when you're going to get the same, if not better results doing this way. You just have to pay attention at how close you're putting your seedlings and the timing. You want to make sure that when you're starting seeds, you're timing it just right. And we're going to be starting a lot of seeds together, so we'll talk about that. But you don't want to start things too early on, and then you're constantly having to up pot and keep them closer to the light, and then you're fighting for space because you started things too early. Because I timed things just right. Last year was a perfect example. I timed my zinnias so perfect. They were in here for a short period of time, and then we transitioned them outside, and they grew so beautifully, like the best zinnias I've ever had. They were short, they were stocky, and they took off once we got them in the ground. So timing is also very important, but what isn't important is buying hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of light bulbs that are so expensive that you don't need for seed starting. So before we move on, that's how much we spent outfitting a rack, and we have 4 of these. Now right now I only have 1 set up, which is going to be more than enough to start out with, and then I will use the second shelf as overlap, and if I need to, I will bring in the 3rd and the 4th. But really, I think I'm going to be able to do this with no problem with this 1 rack, and then maybe 2 more shelves on the other rack. In terms of how many seeds I can start per rack, I use the 50 cell seed trays, and I fit 4 trays on each of the rows, which gives me about 1,000 seeds per rack. Now, if you use 72 cell seed starting trays or the 80 cell ones, then of course that number drastically goes up. So the number of seeds you can start really depends on the size of your trays, or if you do soil blocking, that's also a really great way to go, and you can fit a ton more on each of the shelves. I personally just like these cell trays. I've shown you these before. I bought these at a local hydroponic store. They don't have a brand on it, so I can't even tell you where to get these. All I know is they're so firm, they're really nice, to have big holes on the bottom, and they're very tough plastic, which I really like because I can reuse them year to year to year. I've had these for going into 4 years now, and they haven't let up at all. Although I don't have a link for these trays for you guys, there is another company that I love, and I haven't worked with them personally, although I would love to, and they are Bootstrap Farms. My friends and some of my friends that are farmers, they use their trays and they are amazing. They last for such a long time. They're, again, this really tough plastic material, so they're not going to break and get damaged in a couple of seasons. And that is one thing you need to consider. Yes, you are spending a little bit more money up front for trays, maybe domes, your lights, your rack, but if you do the math, and if you're going to have this set up for years to come, it's really not that bad of an investment. And I would rather spend a little bit more money upfront buying quality products versus having to replace those flimsy 6 cell trays every year, and just also having like a mishmash of everything. I don't like that either, because that takes away from my space. If I can keep everything consistent, I know exactly, I can do the math, and I know exactly how much I can fit in each row without having to, again, jimmy rig this tray and then another brand's tray, and that. So I just like to keep it consistent across the board. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about how much money you have to spend You might have to spend a little bit more upfront for some of your things, not a ton, but a little bit more, but you're going to have it for years and years to come. So it's worth it. The next thing I wanted to touch on is heat mats. Do you need a heat mat to seed start? And the answer is yes and no. So heat mats are wonderful if you don't have a heated room. This room gets so warm. In fact, I'm like, oh, it's getting really warm in here. This room gets so warm, and we keep a thermometer in here, and it gets to about 70, 75 degrees, depending on how often we leave the door open. So I'm not worried about it being too cold in here. The only time I may turn on our heat mats are in the evening time when the lights go out. We will typically turn them on for seedlings that require like 75, 80 degrees to germinate. I will keep them on there, but for the most part, we don't use heat mats. Now, if you're going to start them in an area that is very cold and doesn't get that warm, then yes, you definitely want to get heat mats, and you will want to get one for each of the shelves that you have, depending, again, on the seedlings that you're going to start. So you have to do a little bit of research and understand what are the temperature requirements for your seeds to germinate. It all varies with different flowers and vegetables. So I have, I think I have 3 or 4 of these heat mats. I use them in the beginning, but kind of not for everything, like zinnias, cosmos. A lot of the flowers that we start don't really require the heat mat because it's so warm in here, like I said. But if there are going to be nights where we dip down and we don't have the heat running in the house, then yes, I might use the heat mat. For the most part though, our house stays pretty warm, and this room definitely stays very warm. So heat mats, yes, if you have a cool area and you're not going to be able to keep a whole room to about 70, 75 degrees. No, if you can give them that temperature environment. The other thing I wanted to show you guys is if you end up going with this setup, I like to have my cords all running in one direction, and then they go all the way down and plug into our surge protector. If you have any concerns about how many lights you can plug in into one outlet, make sure you talk to your electrician and just let them know what those numbers are, the voltages and everything, and just get that confirmed that it's not going to be an issue for your outlet. We had ours checked out, and so everything is fine. It's not a danger or anything like that. But again, we did talk to an electrician about this setup before we plugged everything in. The last thing I wanted to talk about is how long do we keep our lights on for our seedlings? And we have these set to a timer to be on for about 16 hours a day, which does seem like a lot, but they really do need all of that light source in the very beginning. And so we start out our trays very close to the light. We usually have them with the dome on. Once we start to see them sprouting, we take the domes off, and then we put them right up against the light. And don't worry about this hurting them. If you're using these bulbs, you're not going to hurt them. In fact, if you keep them very far from the light, they're going to start growing very leggy, and they're going to be very weak. So the closer you can keep them to the light, the better it is. If you don't have this setup and your lights can't adjust, then you can go ahead and just take like books or like trays, something, and lift them up so they're very close to the light, almost touching the light. And we'll show you once we start our seeds how close we keep them. I mean, they're like right on top of the tray. So that is very important, especially in the beginning, right once they start to germinate. Anyways, I think that covers everything I wanted to share with you guys. I'm so happy that we got this space cleaned up, and now we're ready to really get into seed starting, which is such an exciting time because there's just so much possibilities of beauty to come when we start all of our seeds. And I'm just so looking forward to this year's cut flower garden and having beautiful cut flowers throughout the landscape. I cannot wait. If you guys have any questions about seed starting setups, let me know. I love to get into this whole topic because I've done like an obscene amount of research. And so I feel very good about the knowledge that I have and the knowledge I get to share with you guys. So if you have any questions, let me know down below in the comments section. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today in our seed starting room. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.